Hello, welcome to another episode of Tea Time with Eddie. So today's topic is taking happiness to the next level. And so as you progress in this world, as you are manifesting the process of being born, growing old, becoming sick and dying, there is an important thing. There are important things that you can do in the intermediate periods between these unavoidable contingencies. And what you want to do, or what you should strive to do, or based off of the fact that all beings do seek happiness, is to develop ways to take that happiness to the next level. And so what exactly does this entail? Well, what you can say through analysis of your life and the things that are going on in your life then is that you will experience certain times. If you have a precious human rebirth, especially, you will experience certain times in which there is an experience that gives you a genuine sense of connectivity, a genuine sense of happiness, and it's very easy to identify this. And it's natural and uncontrived. And you can see this happening within a baby's eye. And that is part of the reason why, babies command so much attention from their loved ones around them, and also can command so much attention from people who randomly encounter them in the right situations, of course. And it's because they notice this natural ability to become extremely joyful without any kind of second guessing. And so, when this happens, basically what is occurring is an experience of happiness. And so as you progress, though, in this world, this sort of experience can become more complicated to sort of naturally apprehend. And that's why there are various mental trainings that one can do in which they go through the process of concentration and then developing wisdom alongside. And the reason behind this is to basically get back to that sort of natural, uncontrived happiness, but also do it within circumstances so that there can be more of a conveyance of this particular sort of essence of reality. And basically, what can occur as well is that once you initially sort of enter into these experiences of mental training, there will be numerous instances, depending of course on the person's individual like perception and inclinations, or you could also say karma. There will be a varied amount of these uncontrived experiences of happiness. Sometimes there's quite a bit. Personally speaking, there have been numerous instances in my life when this has occurred, and oftentimes these experiences have occurred while dwelling within solitude, engaging in intense meditation. But also they have occurred as well while interacting with others in rather large social gatherings. And these experiences occurred quite frequently throughout much of my younger adult life, particularly, I suppose, like during my early to mid to even late 20s as well. Those experiences took on the form oftentimes of being associated with Tibetan Buddhist teachings and masters. And those things are still with me, and I meditate upon them and reflect upon them every single day. Also, these experiences didn't necessarily have that particular form, but what was kind of nice about those was that those experiences had a quality of being somewhat universal, yet also having that solid foundation of that particular sort of connection to the Tibetan Buddhist lineage. So, as I have been, though, progressing throughout the world, I haven't had as much of an inclination to necessarily travel to India as frequently as I once did, or to travel to various Tibetan Buddhist temples as frequently as I once did in the country of America. However, though, there is at the same time a certain feeling of necessity for this, and also there is still this sense of connection to all of this. This sort of thing, though, takes a fair amount of work to actually sort of maintain. The work is basically what I will call the work of taking happiness to the next level. And so what exactly is this? And I think it's important to sort of understand that there is no one particular form that one should adopt to be like truly happy. And if you really do feel that way, oftentimes you become bogged down by dogmatism, or rather dogmatic views, and you automatically sort of shut your mind off for the more expansive possibilities available. And if that is the case, then you have to be somewhat wary. And a sign of that actually happening would be the fact that you would feel compelled to convince other people of your viewpoint, to an extent to which you're actually using energy that could be used for many other things to actually cause this manipulation of appearance. And it doesn't necessarily entail you understand the sort of nature of appearance not being truly solid. So, from my personal perspective, particularly when I train this practice under the stressful conditions that can sometimes occur at my place of work, which is actually, can be a fairly strenuous, laborious activity while working within the kitchen. Oftentimes, though, what I do is I engage in what I like to call the process of reflection, while simultaneously engaging in energetic activity. So having these two work together actually is a very nice relationship. And the reason for this is because of the tendency we have through habit, to try and repeat favorable circumstances and avoid unfavorable circumstances that you've experienced in life. And you can see this sort of drive in the activities of almost every single person that you can encounter in this world. Oftentimes you will see people who are really seeking to do certain things that they have associated in the past as bringing them joy based off of the circumstances that occurred in the past. And they're seeking to repeat these particular experiences in order to sort of recreate those circumstances which have already occurred. And the downside of this is that if you have the particular view within your mind, this particular belief that the circumstances which have already happened have yet to actually happen, that's an automatic like thing that you should identify as being untrue. Because the law of cause and effect is such that when things come together to a certain point and they ripen, those collection of things coming together in that way for that same ripening simply cannot happen again like that. But you associate that particular instance of ripening as something that is truly existent because of the fact that you are in this desire realm, because of the fact that you are craving pleasure and you're trying to avoid pain. And so because of that, you have a habit of attaching to pleasurable experiences. Now, if you reflect upon those experiences, you actually start to understand that you don't necessarily have to repeat them as they once were. And while you reflected upon these experiences, if you are engaged in energetic activity, which, by the way, is something that is very easy to do in this world because there's so much stimulation everywhere, so much stimulation available to you, even if you are literally lacking in like financial resources that you don't even necessarily have a home of your own that you can sustain yourself in, you can still, if you really wish to, come across the ability to to seek stimulation through connectivity to the internet, particularly in the United States of America. And that's just an example, of course. But you can see, and through the connection to the internet, there is so much stimulation available. But, that's just one example among many in this world available to people. And so, what I'm getting at here is essentially that if you engage in the process of reflection, but at the same time, you're also engaging in an energetic activity that you do on a daily basis, whatever that may be. Maybe it's going to work, maybe it's running errands, maybe it's attending to family matters, maybe it's, a whole variety, a myriad of things. But if you are engaging in the reflection of those past experiences, the good and the bad, while you're doing these activities, what happens is, if you're doing it appropriately, is you find yourself not repeating these things. And you're not repeating these things naturally because of the fact that you are starting to understand the truth of cause and effect with an appearance. And there's no reason to try to alter this particular fact. And you will get to the point where you might kind of realize that you're kind of happy with the fact that those circumstances have ripened and dissipated. And if you acknowledge that, there can be a very genuine source of happiness that seems to be spontaneously created suddenly. And this is something that is beneficial to do when you have the faculties of the human intelligence. And that is because you have the ability to recall things that came together at a certain time. And you can recall these things and reflect upon them and explore them to your fullest extent while you're doing a particular kind of activity. And what happens is that if you're doing it right, is the activity you're doing, all of a sudden you find yourself not acting as if, oh, well, I need to sort of start developing this kind of relationship because I remember this relationship I once had years ago. And I'm not going to impute these qualities on this person with this potential relationship. And if you do this, then what happens is there's a certain level of baseline suffering that is already one of the primary conditions for this formation. And so what happens is you're able to take strength from the fact that if this relationship, you're able to take strength from the fact that you are ready for more of a newness of experience to happen with this relationship which could possibly form. And if there is no particular formation of the relationship, which, very well could come about, if the nature of it doesn't necessarily have this form of interaction, which perhaps you might have this sort of subtle clinging towards, you can actually accept that coming and going a lot more easy. And the fact that you do that is, an empowering act. And something that really represents your stage of development. It represents taking happiness to the next level. And so, that's kind of what I'm doing right now. I am, going about making sure that my responsibilities are being done with more skill than I've ever done them before. And while I'm doing these things, I am paying attention to my mind, and I am noticing my tendency towards associating things with an appearance to experiences that I once had. And I analyze this kind of association, and I explore this association that comes up, and I explore that experience I'm associating it with. And by doing this, all of a sudden, I naturally find myself not acting in a way as if I am interested in recreating anything in particular, or to to do anything contrived. And so, the taking happiness to the next level is acting in a way of uncontrived activity. And this uncontrived activity can come about through the use of your intellect by realizing that the experiences that you would normally want to repeat that are favorable and want to avoid that were unfavorable in the past, you can realize that those things really can't come about in that form again in reality. And you can make a choice to not contribute towards the incorrect view that they can. And by doing that, your activity is thus it's actually liberating. And, there might be some friction, there might be some feeling of friction while doing this practice. I mean, I know I feel it every once in a while. There is a certain level of irritation that can pop up. There is a certain level of doubt or, lack of confidence that can come up. But if you dive deeper into the analyzation with concentration, you can realize these things start to liberate themselves and spontaneous joy arises. So cheers. Taking happiness to the next level, spontaneous joy arising within appearance and uncontrived activity is its lover. Anyways, thank you for joining me for another episode of Tea Time with Eddie. Have a nice day.